Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and I wanted to make a video on a topic I haven't talked too much about. I have done a few videos on Jest testing, but not on like testing for like React. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do here. And if you ever use like Create React App to generate your React project, Create React App has Jest testing built in. As you'll notice, like right off the get-go, there's this app.test.js file right out of the gate. So if you look in your package.json, you'll notice that there's this test command because that's actually going to run any test that you write. So it'll know if it's a test because you name the file .test.js at the end. It looks for those extensions and will run any test inside of them. So what I did is I created a basic app. In my app component, I just made it a basic counter. So let me just first cancel out of that. And let's just first demonstrate what we have. npm start. Okay, and it's just a basic counter, see +1 +1. So we know it works, okay? We know it works. That's not the issue. But the idea is that, you know, I might modify this more in the future. And something I might modify later might get it to stop working. And I don't want to have to run through every, you know, have to open this up in the DOM and test every little button click and everything myself every single time. So this is where testing comes in, because there are different types of problems you have. Sometimes you have syntax errors, and that's what linting is for, okay? And ESLint is built into Create React App, so that's going to catch your syntax errors. Then there is type errors. This is where TypeScript comes in. I don't have TypeScript on this particular project, but the idea is that maybe, hey, one of your functions is passing a string when it should be passing a number, or a number was passed when it should have been a string. That's going to get caught by like TypeScript, because you're going to define like what your data should be returning, what your functions should be returning, what should be receiving as parameters, all these kind of things. So that way TypeScript can be like, nope, you made a mistake. But the one thing that linting and typing doesn't fix is logic. Okay, you may all the types may match, all the syntax may be correct, but just the way the things are logically laid out just don't work the way you want them to. And this is where writing tests comes in. So always the test is the focus is not necessarily on syntax and typing, it's whether this does the result of your application do what it's supposed to do. So as we know, my app component should be able to count. It's going to generate that output, an H1 that actually counts the number, and then two buttons that we can use to control the click. And this whole exercise I did write a blog post on. So if you head over to toots.alexmercedcoder.com, hit shift to refresh from the cache, and you'll find this article there, so you can kind of see all this code laid out. So what I would do is I'd go to app.test.js and I'd write some tests. Now if you've watched my other videos on testing with Jest before, you know basically the idea is that each test gets wrapped in this test function, and that gives it the test a name. And then this arrow function is where you would run any particular test that you want to be part of that particular go around. And then what we're doing is that we're using React comes with this @testing library React. It's like an extension to Jest that allows you to do things like render the component. So what this does, this render function, is that it's going to sort of mock render the component and create sort of like what the DOM representation would be, so that way you can refer to it. So now theoretically my app component now kind of like exists in the imaginary DOM, and then what I'm going to do is I can use this I can try to get something from that DOM using this screen. So screen allows me to grab stuff that would be on the screen. So I'm saying, hey, I want to grab the H1. Now I can't. It's not like the DOM API in JavaScript where I can be like document.getElement by ID and just target an H1 directly. I will talk about how you can target a particular element, but the idea here is we want to make sure, like, hey, is there something with the text that I expected on? So this first test, I'm trying to say, hey, is that H1 actually there? So, and theoretically, not only should be there, but the count should start at 0. So I'm testing that. This one's a simple test. So I'm saying, hey, get me an element that has a text of 0, because the only thing that should have a text of 0 at the beginning is the H1, so that should be in here. And then I'm saying, hey, I expect this H1 to exist. So like this should return something. So if H1 is undefined, then this fails the test. Okay. So right now, if I run the test, npm run test, okay, I should get a successful test. See, and we'll go over these tests in a second. But see, my test succeeded. Now let's say I changed my application. I said, hey, I want the count to start at 5 here. Okay, now it runs a test, and the test fails. Okay, so that way, in case someone accidentally changed that, the initial state of my app, I'm going to catch that, because it's going to be like, wait a second, this doesn't start the way it's supposed to start. And I may have never thought about that. Okay, so you want to write as many tests as you can to test sort of every sort of possible thing. But again, the idea is that the count should start at 0. And the idea is if I hit the buttons, the count should increment. So let's take a look at my other 2 tests. So I have a test for testing the +1 button. So again, we render the app component because that's the component we're testing. Okay. But with that app component, which should be on the screen, okay, is a button. And that +1 button should have the text of +1 on it. Okay, so I'm going to get that element. So that should hold my button. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that button. That's what this does. I'm firing a click event on that button. And theoretically, if I click that button, it should increase the state, which should then cause the component to re-render and update to have a +1 inside that H1. So I'm saying, hey, get me the element with the text of 1. Because technically, if everything worked correctly, there should be an H1 with the text of 1 afterwards. So then I check to see if that's in the document. Okay, if it doesn't, if that doesn't work, then it won't, that test will fail. So right now, it works. But let's say it's not going to end up with a number of 2. Okay, so if I put 2 here and say, hey, that's going to fail because technically it doesn't change to 1. So it'll actually show you the output. Like this is the DOM after the button click. H1 with 1. There's the button with the +1 and the other button with the -1. So it's like, wait a second, there's nothing with the number 2. So when I run this line, I'm saying, hey, I expect this thing, the H1, to be in the document. Okay, it's like, no, you failed. So you also have to make sure that your tests actually are written correctly, because you don't want to get false negatives. And then now here's where we run into a wrinkle. I once again render the app. So here we're testing the negative button. I'm going to render the app. I'm going to grab the minus button because I want to click on it. So the button has a text of -1. I click the button. After clicking the button, we should have -1 on the screen. Here's the problem. The button says -1, but so will the H1. So I got to be more specific. So when I do this get by text thing, I can pass a second argument with options, and one of those options being the selector. So I'm saying get me the H1 with the text -1. Okay, and then that gets saved in this variable. I check to see if that is in the document. And these are some basic tests. There's a lot of potential types of tests you can run. Okay, like if I go back to this blog post and scroll back to the bottom to the documentation, there's a lot of things we can do here. Okay. So you can fire all sorts of events, whatever kind of event you need, click, submit, whatever, to test your forms. Okay, we can query things by like alt text, title, you can query the API. But yes, but then you just say, hey, you do the thing. Okay, let's see here. Here's some more stuff specific to React. Okay. But you guys get the idea. And then again, this is Jest, so you have all these expect functions from Jest. So like Jest js.io, we go to the docs. Okay. We can, again, all these expects, and you're just saying, hey, I expect to be to equal to be, so you can also test other things as well. But that's the idea. That's all there is to testing. You just see if things work the way they expect, and the resulting changes to your UI are what you expect them to be when certain events are triggered. But the beauty of that is other people manipulate other components and change things. These tests can be run, and things you haven't even thought about in a long time will be tested, and you don't have to worry about, hey, do I need to remember every possible edge case every time? Because I've already written tests for those edge cases, and now those edge cases will be tested whenever anybody's changing this code base, which is why it's important to do uh, tests in your code. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy.